Welcome back to the Scotti-BYTE channel, and this is Scott. So I wanted to be a little bit festive coming towards the beginning of the new year, and so I have my group hug shirt on, which is a little bit of a cartoon about s'mores. So in the last couple of weeks, I have been working on several utilities that I presented. One of them was the Termex web-based terminal access manager, which lets you create various terminals to different systems with a web-based application. And that was a great video, and it's been received very positively. Another one that I did was the fuzzy command line finder, and that allows you to recall any command using a search string from your history and being able to edit that command and re-execute it. And then finally, a few days ago, I did the Fresh Terminal Editor, and that was basically a replacement for Nano. So today we're going to look at an application called TextArea. And so basically, TextArea is a minimalist text editor that lives in a URL. And this is pretty trippy. When I first looked at it, I didn't really understand exactly what it was going to be able to do. But when I played with it, I discovered pretty quickly that this might be a great utility to use in your home lab. So TextArea lets you type or paste any text into a browser tab, and then the text is encoded and compressed into the URL real time. And that basically means that you can create and share notes that are stored entirely in the URL hash, and you can either share the URL or you can share a QR code with someone else, and then when they receive it, it will regenerate the text. And this means you can share formatted text such as YAML files that are real space specific, or other types of text that's formatted. I'm mainly thinking of code, but certainly it could be notes or anything along that line. And you can either share it with yourself or share it with another user if you go ahead and create a reverse proxy for the program. Let's provide just a little bit of a demo on how we might use TextArea. And over here, I've opened TextArea in my browser. And in my particular case, I have a reverse proxy to it, and I called it textarea.scotti-byte.com. So you can just start typing something if you like here. But one of the nice features is you can always put in a £, otherwise known as a hashtag for those people under the age of 50. But I have a problem going to the store and ordering 3 hashtags of lemons. I'd rather buy 3 pounds of lemons. In any event, I can have this and type in sample title and hit enter. And you'll notice up here in the browser tab, it now calls this sample title. So I could put anything that I wanted to have appear in my browser tab. And as another example, I can just go ahead and paste something in my cut buffer. And in this particular case, I have the Nginx proxy manager Docker compose out here. This could be any notes. I could type anything in freeform, and it would simply go ahead and print it out. And now that I've got this entered in here, I could go ahead and exit this web tab, and I can come back up here at any point in time and just type in textarea.scotti-byte.com, and it would bring this back up. And the reason for that is because it has stored this data in my local data cache, but it also has created this really long URL up here, which I can copy and email to someone else. And then if I do that and they access this, they would get this text down here formatted exactly the way that you see it. The other thing that I can do is I can go after that first slash after my subdomain name, and I can simply type in the /QR here and then hit enter, and it will create a QR code with all of that data in it. And so if you scan that QR code, you would get exactly that data. And in fact, if you scan that QR code from the video here, it will bring that data up. Even though I'll be getting rid of that data on my system, it doesn't matter because it's encoded into the URL. And I can simply click back to TextArea and it will go back up here and do that. Now I went ahead and modified the front end code for this because the author created the back end code for it, but they really didn't create a web interface for the application. I went ahead and did that myself. So after the slash, if I type in new, I added a command to it, and if I type new and hit enter, it will completely clear the screen and start over again. So as an example, I could go ahead and type in anything that I wanted here text-wise. In fact, for that matter, I could go over here and go maybe to a website. I'm not sure what I want to pick here. Let's just go ahead and pick Amazon.com as an example. And it will go up to Amazon.com, and I can go down here to maybe the bottom of the page, and there's a whole bunch of text here, and I could just copy all of that text. And now that I've done that, I can just go ahead and do a copy. If I go back over here to TextArea and I do a Control V, it will go ahead and paste in all of that text. And of course, we don't have graphics here, we just have text. But the beauty of this is now this URL up here has all of the text that I just pasted in here. And so as an example, I can copy that URL and I can bring up another web browser, which I'll bring up Firefox, which knows nothing about this instance here. And to kind of prove that, if I bring up my Firefox and I simply type in TextArea.Scotti-BYTE.com, if I type it correctly, I'm not going to get anything because it's just going to present me that blank page. In the background, what you're seeing is you're seeing the other web browser. So I'll go full page on this one. And I'll go ahead and paste in that URL up here. And when I hit enter, there you go. You've got all of this text down here. And of course, you can always do Shift Control plus or Control minus to zoom in or zoom out, because it's going to take all the regular browser commands in order to do so. So I think that TextArea is a really great app, and it should be really handy for sharing things with other people. And not only that, maybe copying things between instances that you have in your home lab. Anyway, let's go see how to install TextArea. In order to install TextArea, I'm going to go ahead and create an Incus container because I typically do that on this channel for hosting applications. So I simply have an Incus launch, images, Ubuntu 24.04, and I'm calling it TextArea, and I'm using the default profile as well as the bridge profile, which puts this container on my main LAN, as we learned in Incus containers step by step. And we have boot.autostart equals to true, which means that any time that we reboot the Incus server, it will start this container automatically. And once that container starts, the next thing that we'll do is we'll move inside of that container with an Incus shell TextArea. And so now that we have our container up and running, we do an Inca shell TextArea, and we are inside of the container. Anytime you create a new container or launch a new VM, you always want to go ahead and take the updates, and we do so with an apt update && apt upgrade -y. And in this particular case, all of the updates have been taken for this container. This application is going to have some dependencies, and the dependencies we're going to have are the Nginx web server, Git, which will allow us to get the project from GitHub, CA certificates, net-tools, nano, and OpenSSH-server. And I do the -y, which indicates that I want to go ahead and install the apps without being prompted. Now that the dependencies are installed, I'm going to go ahead and create myself a user account with an add user Scott. I'm going to give Scott a password, verify that password, and then I'm going to give or put Scott into the sudo group with a user mod -a capital G sudo Scott. Let's go ahead and move over to the new Scott account with an su space dash space Scott. The dash says move over to the home folder of Scott, which we created when we created the account. If I do a pwd for permanent working directory, you can see we're in /home/Scott. Since we've installed Nginx, we're not entirely sure whether or not we have Nginx started correctly. So what we're going to do is an enable command by doing sudo systemctl enable Nginx, and that will prompt us for our sudo password. And what that does is it sets Nginx up so that next time the system boots, it starts the Nginx web server. And then for the system as it's running right now, we can do a start, which will start Nginx right now. We can see that our web server is started correctly by doing a sudo systemctl status on Nginx, and here it says that the Nginx web browser is up and running correctly. Now that we have a web server, we can go ahead and move over to the web server root with a cd /var/www. Let's clone the GitHub TextArea project to that folder with a sudo git clone and then the URL for the Git project for TextArea. And now it's been cloned here locally. If we do a sudo ls, you can see that we have an HTML and a TextArea folder. We're going to remove the default site configuration file for the Nginx web server with a sudo rm /etc/nginx sites-enabled/default. And now we're going to create our own sites available file, but specifically for the TextArea app by entering the nano editor. At this point, you're going to want to take a look at the show notes where I provide all of these commands, but I have some code that I've developed here which serves as the front end for TextArea, which is not included in the code that they provide on the GitHub project. So once you put that code in there, go ahead and do a Control-O and enter to save the file out, and a Control-X to exit the nano editor. Next, I'm going to provide a symbolic link for my sites available file back to the default location that Nginx is going to expect it. Since we have changed the Nginx web server configuration files, we're going to restart Nginx with a sudo systemctl reload Nginx. Again, I can't emphasize enough that you need to go take a look at the show notes so you have all the information and commands listed accurately. So at this point, if I do an if config, we can see here that the address of my particular container here is 172.16.2.19. So I want to go ahead and copy that address and go on up to my web browser. So here I'm in my Chrome browser at 172.16.2.19, and I go ahead and hit enter, and the screen goes black. At this point, I can go ahead and type in anything that I want, and it will start being encoded into this URL. So I can say this is a test. We can do a couple of control pluses to make that a little bit larger. And you can see here it's starting to build this URL longer out here. This will make the URL even longer. And so it is building this thing here, and if I copied this and I shared it with another system on my network, that would be great. But you'll notice that this address here is using a local address, and so therefore another user outside of my network would not be able to access this if I shared it with them. So we can fix that by going ahead and creating a reverse proxy record for this application. So here we are in my Nginx proxy manager, and I have a subdomain name which I created out at my DNS provider, in my case Cloudflare, and I created the subdomain TextArea.Scotti-BYTE.com. So you're going to need a domain to do this, and once you have a domain, you should be able to go out to your DNS provider and provide a subdomain name for this type of purpose. So here we are with TextArea.Scotti-BYTE.com. My forward address, and this is for my production version, is pointing to this address, and the forward port is port 80. I have block common exploits turned on and WebSocket support turned on. Then I headed over to the SSL, and I chose the option to create a new certificate, which of course I already have a certificate here. And then I came back in and turned on Force SSL, HTTP/2 support, and HSTS. And then I went ahead and clicked Save. And once I had that, I was able to go down and choose TextArea.Scotti-BYTE.com. That went ahead and opened up the window. Remember back from the demo here earlier in the video, we had put this text in here, and it remembers that. If I wanted to clear that out, I'd have to come up here right past the slash in Scotti-BYTE.com, and before the pound sign or the hashtag for you newbies, I put in a /new, and that would go ahead and clear the screen, and I could start with a brand new document in my TextArea editor. And just as a reminder, when we go into the screen here, once we have a clean and new document, I can go ahead and put in one of these hashtags, and I can go ahead and type in something like Scotti-BYTE and hit enter, and Scotti-BYTE becomes the title of my tab up here at the top that you can see. And then I can type in any other text that I want. And of course, as I do so, this URL will become longer and longer. And it is this URL that I share with people outside my network. They would be able to access it because it is going through my subdomain. And as another reminder, I can come back up here just past the slash, and I can type in QR and hit enter, and that will give me a QR code for all the text that we see back in the editor. And so this seems to really work well. back down in the terminal for my TextArea container, it's very easy to update TextArea when new versions come out, and it appears to me that they're doing modifications for this app every couple of days. So the way that you want to update this is you want to go ahead and do a cd over to /var/www/TextArea, and once you're over there, you can do another git pull. If we do an ls, you can see where we are. If I do another git pull, it will go ahead and overwrite that. It says it's already up to date because we just updated it. And then what we can do is we would have to restart it if the code was new, and the way we restart it is a sudo systemctl reload engine x. So TextArea is a really fantastic way to share some simple text over with other systems in your home lab, or even with other friends or users. And so one of the great things about it is it's not actually storing anything out on the server. There's no database associated with this thing, and it's entirely encoding all of the data you put into it in the URL field, so it's not stored anyplace at all. Anyway, that's it for today. Please subscribe and like to the channel, and don't forget to hit your notification bell, and we'll see you next time.